So now that we have our match, let's say we want to actually switch weapons at runtime. Well, we're going to do, well, we already know that we have a method that loads the weapon. So let's see if we are that lucky that we can say debug weapon, and let's maybe cut this. Well, let's just do inside update if this is the active FPS controller, if input get key down 1 key code .1 alpha 1 load weapon, and I'm just going to hardcode the second weapon I did, red 1. Okay, one more thing I'm going to change is on the dual match. I'm actually going to change the amount of kills you have to do, just so we have some leeway, because if we do not spawn with the other weapon, the first weapon at first try, we're going to have to reload again. Okay, so we're lucky. No, we're not lucky, we spawned with the second weapon. Yeah, that's the second weapon as well. Hopefully it will work now. Okay, it loaded now, so press 1 and there we go, we have our second weapon, but we actually have two weapons right now onto our hands. So you see we have the first weapon and the second weapon. Okay, so obviously we can't and we don't want to be doing it this way. So whenever we are loading now a weapon, we actually need to be loading this via, instead of IDs, we should be loading them via the runtime items. Let's do a load weapon all. Let's see what we have over here. We're basically just getting the TPS parent, and we have a function that loads the weapon itself. Okay. So we could override this and we could be using the item instance then. So let's do one thing. Let's do public void load weapon random item. Let's see how we call this in here, item, and the rest can remain the same. So I'm going to cut all of this from here. I'm going to paste them in here. Then we could say load the item, load the parent, load the is TPS. Here's one thing though. We could be saving the reference to the weapon, let's see, on the runtime item, and we can remove this. For current weapon, we have to assign this a little bit different. First of all, we need to have a reference to say bool, or well, we'll see what we do there. But what I want to do is on the runtime item, I'm actually going to assign two variables for FPS instance, object instance, and public game object TPS object instance. Let's assign them here then. if it's not TPS, item dot FPS object instance equals the weapon object, and for the rest TPS object instance on the weapon object. We have to remove the current weapon, however, the item. We have to assign it. We have to also remove this one, and we're going to do public void load weapon on current, and we're going to be using runtime item as well. Then current weapon will be item, then weapon hook. Let's see what we had here. Current weapon, maybe no. So I got on a call, so ignore that. So we have our current weapon. Let's actually start going back. Because, so this now needs to be stored on the item. Okay. Then that means we can create the void, public void load weapon on current. So we have a runtime item. Then we just need to do current weapon dot current weapon equals item, then current weapon FPS object instance set active to true, then current weapon TPS object instance set active to true as well. The difference now is we should be checking if current weapon is not null. So if there is a previous current weapon, FPS object instance set active false, and TPS object instance then. Okay, so back to the very beginning. Instead of loading the weapon like this, well, actually we could just eliminate this entirely, I guess. But this is actually wrong. So we need to get the transform from the right hand. And we need to get, well, we already have the transform for the parent. Okay, so let's collapse that. Then we need to find weapon 1. And weapon 2. Okay, the weapon IDs we're using, we already have them from above, so let's create a second. Well, for dual it's assigned randomly, so I'm going to just override that for now, and we're going to assign red and red 1. Okay, so we have weapon 1 and weapon 2, which means we have created the instances. Another thing that I actually want to do is when we're loading these weapons, we're going to be closing the weapon object so then load weapon 1, right hand is TPS. Actually we can encapsulate this, then we can say public void load weapon loadout, and that will do. Let's see, I think weapon all, it's this TPS parent, TPN parent. This also creates the references, so we're going to have to use this. So weapon loadout, let's say random item weapon 1, random item weapon 2, right hand. Okay, then we have the right hand, which means load weapon weapon 1, right hand is TPS false, TPS or FPS, come on, weapon parent. I think that's the correct one, although I don't remember right now, so better safe than sorry. Let's go back. That's what, oh, damn it. This one, there it was. Public void load weapon loadout. Okay, then you have your runtime weapon. Then we do load weapon 1, right hand false, true, TPS parent or transform. Where's the TPS parent? There it is. Okay, then, well, I guess we don't really gain anything from doing it down here, so whatever. TPS parent. Okay, that's for weapon 1. Copy the exact same thing for weapon 2. Right hand. Okay, then load weapon on current weapon 1. Okay, so this will now load your weapon. This will be doing the same thing, but now we can go inside update and we can do on our test down here load weapon on current. If current weapon equals weapon, yeah, we need to store the weapons now, damn it. I'm going to assume we're only going to be using 2 weapons, so primary weapon, secondary. Okay, Then if current weapon is primary weapon, load current weapon with a secondary weapon, else load weapon on current primary. Okay, then that means instead of weapon 1 and weapon 2, we can just assign it to primary weapon, secondary weapon, primary weapon, secondary weapon, primary weapon, and secondary weapon, and load the primary weapon. Okay, so now we should have weapon switching, just like that. You see, it sometimes pays to have planned ahead. Okay. And there we go. We switch weapons just like that. Of course, we should play an animation to this, but we'll fix that later. And that's actually the prefab shooting. We don't the particles playing, or we have it ticked on play on awake. We don't actually shoot. We can fix that super easy. Just go over here, just find this and untick play on away on all of this. Okay, that's for weapon pivot 1. Let's find weapon pivot 2. There we go, we saved that. So let's encapsulate this, however, because we probably would like to assign this on a network frame as well. So load weapon on current, actually we will do load character, load weapon. We will do a switch weapon method, public void switch weapon. Then on the update, what we just written for update, let's see, where is it? Here it is. Just going to change this to switch weapon. Then inside, I'm just going to drop this here. Now, this we should expand this a little bit later, since if we want to have grenades and melee and stuff like that. But for now, this works fine. And since we have the switch weapon, it means we can also set up a flag for saying weapon switched equals true. Of course, we don't have that weapon flag. Let's see, where is our flags? There it is. Public bool weapon switched flag. Let's call it that instead. Weapon switched flag. Here's the thing. We should have, yeah, on our network print now, on late update, or where do we have the, yeah, we have it here. Let's change the RPC type to another one, switch weapon. So that means copy this, paste this, if switch weapon flag, close the flag, then let's rename this to switch frame. Here's one thing we should save as well though. On our stored ID, we need to go on the controller, on the current weapon, and we need to save the instance ID. Okay, and we add that on the switch frame. Then when we are playing back at our switch frame, for switch weapon, for example, we will say on the controller switch weapon. Here's one thing though, we should do controller.switch weapon, and we have an overload method for that. Where we will actually be passing the instance ID of that. Okay, let's pass the instance ID which we get from the replay frames. Switch stored ID. Okay, and of course down here we don't want to be changing, we don't want to set up the flag anymore. And we need to find which of the runtime items correspond to the instance ID. If I'm not mistaken, we can get runtime item just from the instance ID. So that will mean load weapon okay, load weapon, let's see, okay, load weapon all, load weapon on current, actually, that's what we need, load weapon on current item. So I'm curious if we get this on the first try, so let's test this. So let's go over here, let's switch weapons, we have to reload, yeah, the frames won't be enough. So change this to global settings, let's do like 200 frames, just so that we're sure we hit the switch. So I'm going to go, I'm going to fire, I'm going to switch, I'm going to reload, and I'm going to finish him. Okay, the main problem is that we are starting with the wrong weapon then. Which means we should be storing which weapon we started. That way. So well, actually, we can be storing which weapon we started. Well, for right now, we can just enforce when we are changing the switch, when we're doing the switch. Well, we could just store the weapon we're using on the network frames as well. But yeah, right now I'm just going to say, I'm just going to enforce it to play. I'm just going to force it to play the primary. To do that, I need to set this up as a public runtime item. We're going to remove this in a second. So primary is read the 911 and the M9 is the secondary. Okay, there we are. perfect. And that didn't work, damn it. So the reload frame didn't actually work. The switch weapon didn't work. Oh, I think we forgot to assign, yeah, I think we forgot to switch this. Weapon switch flag should be switch weapon. Okay, so the easiest way to do this will be to have an index, or well, to have a flag which actually weapon we're using, but I think we should do this a little bit more elegantly. So we're going to create a list of runtime items. So let's see, we have primary runtime, okay, which means a list of runtime item, weapon, or carrying items. You'll see why I'm using a list, but I also would like to also have a way to get or current item index, I'll say. So let's fix the errors. Primary weapon will now be carrying items dot add red 1, carrying items then dot add red, then we're going to assign carrying item 0, carrying item 0, carrying items 1, and carrying items 1. Then switch this to carrying item 0. Then down here we should change this a little bit, and we're going to say if carrying items dot well, actually if index current item index equals 0, current item index equals 1, then load let's see, load weapon on current, carrying items. I think I'm going to rename this to load item on current, carrying items, current item index, then else current item index equals 0. Keep in mind that we do have grenades. We also have the special weapons, like, you know, the predator missiles, all those things. These are things that we need to take into account. So this will now work correctly, but we should be assigning on the network frames. Then on the network frame, let's find the normal network frame. Network frame RPC. That's network frame RPC. We just want the normal network frame. Network frame. This one. We also want to keep store of the active item. Okay, then on the stream, f dot active item controller dot current item index. Then don't destroy a load, this gives me object. Let's remove on the start replay, let's remove this one, we don't need it anymore. Then when we're loading the frame, on the replay time, let's see, where are we loading the frame? Yeah, here we're loading the frame. We need to be checking replay frames, game timer. That's the first one. Load network frame. Inside the network frame, then we need to be checking if f dot active item is not the same as the controller dot active current item index. Let's rename this to active item as well. Then we're going to force the controller dot load item on current, and we're going to force it by index. So copy that, copy the same name, load item on current integer index, then load item on current, load item on current, and that will be current items index. Okay, so now we will be loading our index. Then on the network frame RPC, where we're using here, instead of the store ID, we could just be using the index instead of this. We'll do the same thing. So the real question is, because we could get stored ID of greater value, so that means bigger messages, we're going to then create another class, another variable inside here, where we will be having a public integer stored integer. Then let's see, play animation. When we are doing this, we're going to say, instead of switch weapon, we're going to say load item on current, the stored integer. Then in late update, we just need to actually store that integer. And where is this happening? Inside update, not late update. Has switched flag. Instead of store ID, let's say stored integer controller dot active item index. Okay, so I think that will do it. That will give us the intended result, so you can now actually have the switching weapons through the replay. Not that it matters that much, but if it did happen in that amount of time, then you probably should show it. Of course, that's very small. That's a tiny thing that you can add, but you can see now we have different weapons. We change weapons, and voila, we play that. Perfect. So that's it for this part then. As always, you know what to do. Like, subscribe, and if you like to see more stuff, more videos, more series, more of everything, then consider supporting my Patreon so we can keep making all of these nice things we're making. I'll see you next time.